Welcome to PA Centered, a podcast designed to help listeners be a part of the solution to end sexual harassment, abuse, and assault. Each episode, we will take on a topic or current event to help spark conversation and break down barriers to building communities free from sexual violence.
Hi, I'm Jaime Cipher. I use we and she pronouns, and I'm the Children's Advocacy Coordinator at PCAR, the Pennsylvania Coalition to Advance Respect. I'll be your host today as we're joined by the folks from the Rape Crisis Center and Children's Advocacy Center Collaborative Mentorship Project to talk and learn more about the project's goals and to understand the importance of collaboration.
Hi, I'm Candace Linehan. I use she and her pronouns, and I work at Delaware County Victim Assistance Center as their managing director.
And I'm Sarah Gibbons. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Executive Director of Family Support Line Child Advocacy Center in Delaware County.
Hi, I'm Marlene Austin. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director at Passages Incorporated. We're the Sexual Violence Center that we serve Clarion, Clearfield, and Jefferson counties.
And I'm Mary Tato. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the director at the Child Advocacy Center of Clearfield County.
Thank you, folks. Welcome. We'll have longer bios in the text for folks to read more about these wonderful people, but we have so much to discuss. We wanted to make sure we jumped right in. So, as we know, collaboration between rape crisis centers and CACs isn't always easy for counties in Pennsylvania. And we know that collaboration between your centers wasn't always possible either. So if you don't mind, can you all share a little bit about what it was like before? What were those roadblocks?
Sure. So I can explain what happened in Delaware County between the Victims Assistance Center and Family Support Line. You know, as a lot of these agencies started in the 70s. They were grassroots organizations that were started by very strong women leaders. And at the time, they were so new that I think there was a lot of need to fight for the existence of them and also to fight for funding. So there wasn't necessarily a natural alliance between the organizations because they were really just getting started and off the ground. In Delaware County, Candace and I started as leaders. Candace had been there longer than I have, and you can talk about that, Candace. But I started in 2019 after following a leader that had been there for over 30 years. And it was an opportunity to really start anew and to have a different perspective. And I was fortunate. I know not everybody is fortunate to have the perspective of a clean slate, but I came in not really understanding the history or what the issue was.
Yeah, and my years with the organization was really led by our founder for 45 years of the organization. And we had been used to, as a rape crisis center, doing things the way that we had always done it. And once a child advocacy center was introduced into our county, I think there was a lot of fear and we became very territorial. The leadership at that time didn't respect each other professionally or about the goals in which both organizations really desired to reach. And so that's where the challenge began and things got worse from there. So I agree with Sarah that while she had a new slate, we had some harbored issues that really needed to be resolved.
When we both moved into our current leadership roles, Mary and I were both at our organizations per se, but we moved into these current leadership roles at about the same time. And the CAC was just getting started in Clearfield County. And that was about, 13, 14 years ago, around there, Mary?
I think that was when we were getting a functioning MDT.
Right.
We got established in 2015.
Okay, very good. And we knew that from our former directors, we were both collaborating with each other as entities as the CAC was getting up and going and starting. And I think Mary and I both definitely wanted to still keep that collaborating relationship with each other. So ours is a little bit different But as the CAC began seeing children and their non-offending family members, we did hit a couple roadblocks. And really, I would say our only roadblock would be our strict confidentiality that rape crisis centers have. And, as we know, that we will not say anything to anyone unless we have a specific detailed consent for a specific person to do so. So that was a little roadblock that we had. And the CAC needed to know if there's anything that is said that can help the case, they would want to know that. So the other thing that they needed to know from us is if they received any follow-up services with us, they would need like their first name, last initial, or if we make a referral to somewhere else, like a therapist, which we don't have a therapist on staff, or to other social service agencies, that they would want to know that. So that was that roadblock with confidentiality that we had. Both sides at that time, we could have just said to each other, forget it. She could have said, I'm just going to get somebody else here who, it's not so difficult to do that. But we wanted to do what is best for the child and also the non-offending family members. And both Mary and I knew the importance of that. So we simply made a confidentiality agreement together that worked for both the CAC, it worked for Passages, and we also then got the blessing of PCAR. They looked it over for us and said, that looks great. And that was an easy hurdle for us to do because we both wanted the same thing for the child.
And piggybacking on that, Mar, all valid points. The strict confidentiality, I really remember going through that. And part of what we ran into was our MDT, the multidisciplinary team, was really struggling that we had Passages at our case review meetings, but Passages, the counselor that was attending, wasn't saying anything. And that really caused everybody pause. But instead of kind of, pushing back and, not, stomping our feet and not making progress, we sat down, we had a conversation. And not only did we work on that confidentiality thing so that we could make sure that it met your standards through PCAR, but also met what we needed, we educated our team. We used the opportunity of that barrier to have a conversation with law enforcement and children and youth and other victim advocate organizations and our prosecutor, and to say, hey, it's not that they're being oppositional. It's not that they're not engaged. They're doing their job. They can't give that information without the full consent of the clients they're serving. And that was I think that was really such a hat tip to cross training and the importance of that and how through mutual collaboration we're able to do that.
I appreciate what you just said, Mary, because I think education was probably something we didn't start at looking back. And we weren't educated about all the benefits of a CAC and their accreditation, regulations, standards, and services. I'm sure as much as they weren't educated about our standards as well. And so right off the bat, without some education, it really made some things messy. And I hear a lot of respect that your team and Marlene's team had for each other. And I think it does start there. And we started off with a lot of agenda and maybe some ego, I can say, and a lot of disrespect. And something that is very important is it's how we talk about our organizations internally and externally. And it really started off poorly by really speaking poor about the agencies instead of what it sounds like you both did, is that you already had that respect. And so you were able to advance both of your missions to get where you are. Thanks for bringing that up.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing it out, Candace, and pointing it out.
And I'll just add, Candace and Mary and Marlene, just to kind of piggyback on what Candace said. I mean, I think some of it too is also a reminder of who we are and what we do. This is not about us. And Candace and I are both licensed social workers. And we needed to just take a pause and be like, this is not what we are all about, right? I mean, we are here to help the community. And so we need to kind of step back and say, okay, like we need to be reminded of our missions. We need to be focused on our missions, and we need to be focused on the fact that we are here to help. And our disagreements are not helping our community. And I think that was a big aha moment for us when we sat down and we talked around the table. And as far as communication and respect, I mean, sometimes it's trial and error, because I would say, and I know, Candace, you'll talk about this a little later, it takes a while to build that trust, but it helps when you have leaders that are providing consistent messages. The benefits that our staff are now seeing by working together really demonstrates the return on investment of working together. So that has been incredibly helpful too.
Yeah, it takes the role modeling from the top down.
Yes.
And if we're not doing it well, then how can we expect our staff to buy into it, and then ultimately our community and the providers in which we work within? Absolutely, Sarah.
And both of you, Sarah, when you mentioned about you both being licensed social workers, it melted my heart. Like, and the fact that you guys were able to like pause and set ego aside and recognize this is about the children and the families.
Yeah, Sarah, do you want to talk about how we sat down and how that came about? Because I can say honestly, for sure, there was a lot of reservation, but you were new to your organization, and I know you did a lot of hard work to get us to that meeting.
Yeah. So one thing we didn't mention is the executive director at the time was Karen Kitzbert, and she came with Candace as a partnership. And we also had a CAC director who's no longer with us that also came to the meeting. And for me, fortunately, like I said, it was a complete blank slate. I came in not having any kind of knowledge or perspective about what to expect. And I felt something when I met Candace. And again, maybe it was the social worker in me, but I'm like, you look like a good person, like it just kind of like broke the mood. And like I said, I came in totally like, everything's great. Like, let's meet, let's talk about how we can collaborate. Cause I was new, but just breaking the ice in that way, I think was really helpful, because for so long, these meetings were stiff. These meetings were all about like negotiations around, across the table, and people didn't feel like they could trust it. And for me, I have an experience, I have a background where I worked with lots of different coalitions and collaborations. And that's, how it starts. People are very guarded. They are sent by their organizations to be representatives, and they're careful about what they say. But having that trust, building that trust, I think is so important and is so key, and can take a while, and that's okay. But I think, for us, it was an opportunity where we really were able to reach out on a different level. Candace and I were both just social workers, and, we were able to kind of break that down.
Yeah, and you bring up some hurts. I think that's important to acknowledge. You were able to do that, Sarah. You were able to validate that there was a lot of hurt feelings in that room, and that hadn't ever been exposed in that way. So I appreciated that. And that really started off the conversation in a place that I started to feel that my staff, our services, myself were respected. And I think it's about how you create that environment, and you were able to do that. But it's not just us. There's more people that we have to incorporate, and we understand that we have boards, and it really took our boards both to make an agreement. I know that our board mandated our executive director to build this relationship, to resolve this relationship, and to model exactly what we're doing for our victims and our survivors, is showing how we can have conflict and how we can have a healthy resolution to conflict. So I would suggest those that find themselves in this challenging situation that they absolutely have to get their board on the same journey.
So as far as us, it was a little different for Mary and I feel. What I really appreciated was, she made sure that everyone was at the table. She made everybody feel that their role was important. And I know that I really appreciated that, because being multiple counties, we had at the time another CAC that it was totally opposite, I will say. This was just so wonderful for us, because we did feel like, we do have a role here. We can help them out too. We had a counselor who was great at working with teens at that time. So it was easy for Mary to make referrals to us with teenagers. We have and continue to have an amazing legal advocate who supports survivors through the court system. And Mary knew that. And she's also great working with and advocating for survivors and their families as they go through the system. Our legal advocate already had a great relationship with law enforcement. So it was great. It was really, a win-win situation for us. And we were just thankful for her. She's a wonderful person too. So it was great to be collaborating with her.
And on my end, Mar, thank you for all your kind words. With being new to the CAC world when I started and making sure everybody understood our standards, I remember calling all the victim advocate organizations in our county together, and we sat down and we read the standards together for victim advocacy. And I made a verbal agreement that I would not hire a victim advocate as long as the victim advocate organizations in our county could agree to help me meet my standards for victim advocacy. And, 70%, at least 70 to 75% of our cases each year are sexual assault. And a lot of that lift comes from passages, helping us meet those requirements. And you guys really championed that. But I think it was just like a mutual respect and an appreciation that we were all serving the same people, right? And it's about making sure they get the best constellation of services possible, from outcry to completion, and what I love about our relationship is that I feel very versed in passages and what you guys do. I probably don't know all the ins and outs, and that's okay. But I do know when I'm out there doing public relations and I have a survivor come up to me and say, boy, I wish I would have had a CAC when I was a kid because it wasn't there. I can say, do you know you can get free and free and confidential counseling from our local rape crisis center? Let me give you the information.
So it doesn't have to be a one or the other. It can be a team approach. And I think that's something that we now have figured out and we're doing really well. Why aren't we just wrapping around our clients and our survivors all the support that they deserve? And that is from both of the centers, while also not duplicating resources and services.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I would agree with that, Candace. I think we've seen that in Delaware County, especially with budgets shrinking, our funding being cut. I think there's a lot of challenges for us to be able to do all the things that we are expected to do and that we are obligated to do for victims, but we just don't have the budget to do it. And so I know for Delaware County, if the victim finds as their first point of contact Victims Assistance Center, that is their advocate throughout the process. And it really just helps us with, it's one less person that we have to provide case management and services to when it's already been done by Victims Assistance Center. And again, we know that reduces trauma, right? Because they don't have to keep saying it over and over and over again about what they need and the services that they're looking for. And so that has been a huge relief to our staff. They also provide court accompaniment, which is something that we just don't have the capacity to do. It's been a relief for our frontline staff to be able to call on our Victims Assistance Center staff. And the other thing I'll mention too that has been really great is our organizations have created pipelines for careers. We, Candace, Victims Assistance Center provides a vital opportunity for people to get started in the victim service world at very entry-level jobs. And then some of our stuff with forensic interviewers and family advocates is a little bit more intensive, and you need to have more experience to do those positions. And so we've actually received a lot of their advocates to be our staff. And it's great because they know Victims Assistance Center, they know the plan, they know how everything operates, and they really naturally flow into the work that we're doing, the processes and things like that. I will mention, though, because this is really important, we also made a commitment that we were not going to poach each other's employees. So that is really important because we know that doing that just creates more energy for us, and it also costs more when we're constantly having to fight between, taking employees from each other. So that has been really a rewarding thing for us as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you said, Sarah, and it reminded me to something that Mary has done. She went through our sexual assault counselor training. So she was able to understand a lot more of what we are all about, why our confidentiality is like it is. And not only did she take it, but she has had interns too that have gone through our training. And just like you said, Sarah, was there, we actually hired one of her interns, and she ended up being our prevention educator, and she was phenomenal. And she was with us for 6 years, and she was great. And she had then already the knowledge of the Child Advocacy Center, what it's like, what they're about. So it's just been great.
And that's actually all of my staff, Mark, go through. It's been a while since I've hired, but all my staff, one of our requirements is they have to do the victim advocate training through Passages. And on the flip side for you, you have all of your advocates come to the CAC for orientation and minimal facts interviewing. So that co-training and collaboration. So we have that shared knowledge base of where everybody's kind of operating out of.
Yes, definitely. And Mary's really good about sending us additional trainings that the Pennsylvania chapter offers. And our advocates have gone through multiple trainings throughout the years. So
when I think about, like, we don't have a linkage agreement, you guys are part of our protocol, but anytime I do an update to our protocol that relates to victim advocacy, I'm immediately reaching out to my victim advocate organizations to make sure that it's a fair and accurate representation of the service provisions that are provided, just so that there's that shared language, because it's really helpful for us to make sure that we're pivoting and changing as things go, but to make sure that it's reasonable, and I'm not thinking that we're doing something that we're not.
And that might be a good way for those folks at the centers that are finding themselves in this situation. How do you start that conversation? And it might be to develop a linkage agreement. That is what started really the in-depth conversation that our CAC and our agency had, was really to review that linkage agreement. We are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that 24-hour hotline, crisis services that we offer, often the way or the venue that the client gets to us. And so we might be getting that referral first. And it's really important that both of the organizations understand what's going to happen after and how we're going to work together, and how we do have a shared case before the crisis happens or before the case presents itself. And that's important for us, that we onboard every single staff with education behind the CAC, the history of the CAC, and our procedures and protocols with the CAC. Sarah and I made it a point to make sure that their staff and our staff visited both offices and locations, and we will continue talking about lunch and learns, and we've had them in the past, and other mutual trainings that we've done together and collaborated on and presented together. So I think that also shows our community, our other systems, that we are a team visually, internally, and externally, that we're showing up as partners.
Yep. And oh my gosh, Candace, you will agree with me, I'm sure, that our multidisciplinary team partners we're so thrilled when we finally corrected our relationship, because I can't tell you how many people came to me to say, we are so relieved that you guys are finally working together, because it was so much effort, so much extra work, with having to negotiate stuff when the two parties were not working together. And now it just makes it so much easier. So not only are you working well together, collectively with victims, but then law enforcement, is happy. The district attorney's office is happy. Our medical providers are happy, because we're finally an actual multidisciplinary team. It's not one or the other against each other in the community.
We put too much burden on everybody else. It was unnecessary burden. This work is already heavy. There's no reason to add heaviness to the work.
And I think that really needs celebrated, because at the end of the day, it's about the kids and the families that we serve.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Are there any other benefits that you all want to speak to? I'm hearing this piece about, less stress, not only on, the survivors that we're serving first and foremost, but also the systems at play, whether that's law enforcement, our DA's office, our local medical personnel, and just how that coming together puts less stress on them, whether that's labor intensive or fiscally intensive. But are there other benefits?
Well, we've collaborated in joint grants. We have shared in expenses. We have developed task forces that we both represent our agencies on. And so they're county task forces. We have had resources that we've shared, actual product, clothing, food, hygiene items that we've been able to share. We also support each other's fundraising efforts. And we also have done both county and state legislative advocacy together as partners.
And that might actually be one way to start. I know for us, trainings. I mean, everybody needs trainings. We're all required to, as using the same funding sources like VOCA, PCCD. So that might actually be a way to start the process, is saying, let's do a joint training with our staff, kind of easing into it instead of having like a top-down approach where you have the leaders convening in a room. Maybe it's trying to get the temperature kind of more level set by offering something that everybody benefits from.
And one of the things that Clearfield I think about from Marlene and I developing the relationship we have and that shared knowledge, I invited her to join my advisory committee. That she's been such a strong advocate on there, and she's a good attender. I can count on Mar being there, bringing her ideas to the table. But over time, I ended up joining Passage's board of directors because I became so impassioned about the work they're doing that I want to be able to help them and use my time and talents outside of work to be part of that bigger collective support system.
Right. And Mary's been a part of our board now for probably going on almost 2 years. And I felt like I could kick myself because, we've been together and do so much together all the time. And I'm like, why didn't I ask her before? And she brings so many ideas to our board of directors too. It's just been amazing. And we attend each other's fundraising events. Mm-hmm. And that's been great. Actually, because we're 3 counties, she gave us an idea of one of her fundraisers, and I'm doing that now, but I'm staying clear of her area because she does that in Clearfield County. So it's just been so great being a team together. It's so great. And when someone said we have to think about what we're doing this for, and it is those children that we want to all help. We want to all help. So, yeah.
This has been such a beautiful, almost, I can see a visual storyline as you all have been sharing, just sharing. Sarah, you shared the initial kind of grassroots function of our agencies and how that in itself can breed competition, right? And especially if we have some of those past hurts that you all are talking about, and the importance of acknowledging those, of coming in with a blank slate when we can, but also acknowledging the hurt and trying to set aside those future resentments to come together, to work together. You all said for the children first and foremost. And I think that's just a beautiful story of healing. I think we hear that story again and again from the survivors that we work with. And it's like you're literally going through that healing journey, coming out on the other side, and it's being more impactful for the folks in your communities. It's just beautiful is not a large enough word for it, I think. Thank you all for speaking and being transparent and even honest with some of the spaces, because I know I feel it that some of that is, it comes from a place where there was hurt. So just to bring that out, and I think that just speaks to the importance of how we actually move forward for folks that might still be struggling in their communities. And before we close out, we wanted to ask for folks that might be interested in the mentorship, what is it that you all can do? How can you assist these folks?
Well, I commit to being vulnerable. I commit to putting aside any ego. I commit to joining with fellow colleagues across the state because how cool is it to have gone through a really difficult experience and be able to be in this position now and overcame that really difficult situation, and hopefully maybe our story, our support, our partnership, our patience, our kindness could help someone else. I mean, I was at a point where I didn't know if this was going to be the place I could stay at if we couldn't mend our ways. And so here I am. And I'm so happy to be here, and we're so happy to be a team. I'm very proud of Delaware County. I'm even more proud of Delaware County today because we were able to overcome that. And now our team, our staff only hear messages through Sarah or myself. So we avoid gossip, and we have eliminated all that. And so we're just at a different place now, but it's possible. So that's what I commit.
Yeah, that's great, Candace. And I know for Mary and I, it was different in a sense, but there were different hiccups that we did have to iron out at first, and it can be done. And what I really heard you and listened to you say was how great it feels and how beautiful it is when you finally get that relationship. That feeling is it's like a 180. And our center was there in your shoes with one of our other counties. And I can just relate because of that feeling. And it is a good thing. And I think, we can really help to bridge this for anyone that's having any trouble. And I know for Mary and I, we commit ourselves to right with you to help anyone who would like to just kind of get over that hurdle.
And I'm going to commit being vulnerable, celebrating your successes, and being there with you through the growing pains and the struggles, because it's not always easy. And I commit to helping ground in those places where we need a little grounding. But I'm also willing to review MOUs or talk about referral processes. And I'm happy to share information on standards.
Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us, talking about the collaborative efforts that you all are doing. I said it once and I'll say it 100 times. You all are some of the most passionate advocates that I've worked with, and your willingness to be vulnerable and honest and connect and set aside differences is beautiful, and in such a world where we're seeing the opposite at times. So it's even more important now. So if you're interested in connecting with the collaborative, please email me, Jaime, at jcipher@pcar-respecttogether.org. That's all the time we have today, but thanks for listening to this episode of PA Centered. You can learn more at www.pcar-respecttogether.org.
Any views or opinions expressed on PA Centered by staff or their guests are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of PCAR or PCAR's funders.